Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Tebow. I'm the designated chair of the State Fire Uniform and Fire Prevention Building Code Council. We have a smallish agenda today. The first thing we're going to do, obviously, is establish a quorum, so I'll call on Kevin here to go ahead and walk us through.
Matt Tebow.
I'm here.
Ben Keller. Here. Michael Weber.
Here.
Vincent Rappaciulo.
Here.
Joseph DeStefano.
Here.
Joseph Toomey.
Here.
Robert Hughes.
Here.
William Tyne.
Here.
Dominic Marinelli.
Here.
Michael Sabatino.
Here.
Keith Wen.
Here.
So that puts us at 10 at locations open to the public and 1 remote.
Okay, quorum is established. My first order of business this morning is to announce that Claudia Bramer has left her county seat, and by operation of law, therefore, she leaves this council. She left the council on January 1st. I want to thank her for her years of dedication and service, both to the council and to the state. By serving here, Claudia was a great voice on my shoulder. I am going to miss her counsel a great deal. She was a master of environmental, or is a master of environmental law, and some of the major issues that we're taking on now and for the next year or so. God, I wish she could have stayed one more year, but I totally understand that she needed to do what's next for her, and I know what's next for her. I've seen her in that capacity already, and I'm very happy for her. So to Claudia, if you're still out there listening, thank you for everything you did for us. We will be attempting to fill that county seat vacancy very, very quickly because we are now pretty low on members, and we have a few in the queue, and hopefully very soon we will have them. Okay, Kevin, you want to walk through the rules of engagement for today because we have people at many different locations?
Yep. So members not in attendance in the Albany location, if you could make sure your microphones are mute. And if you wish to speak, unmute, state your name, and then speak. Right now, we have 8 participants anticipated to give public comment, and we're going to limit the amount of time for each public commenter to 3 minutes. And I will paste the list of the speakers in order into the chat so everybody can see what order that we will have people present. And if your name is not on that list and you wish to address the co-counsel during the public comment period, just send myself a message or Chad Sievers a message so we can get you added to the list, and we'll collect some information. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. I like that. That's a good change so that everyone knows when they're coming up in the queue there. Hopefully that makes things move even a little faster than we have in the past. All right, I'm going to walk through the agenda fairly quickly here, just so that everyone's on the same page. Right after I finish with announcements, we're going to do draft minutes from. We're going to approve draft minutes from December 1st. Then we're going to do a division update. John's going to walk through some of the task forces and other stuff that he has going. Then Peniota is going to walk through some of the legislation that we've seen occur. After that, Kevin and staff are going to give us a uniform code update. We're going to walk through the 5 books that we have pretty much ready for the notice of rule and development phase. From there, we'll finish that. We'll have public comment, as Kevin just said. I'll announce the future meeting dates. We'll then likely move into an executive session to discuss ongoing litigation, and I'll make that motion when we get there, and then we'll adjourn. I'm going to just take a chair's privilege for half a second here and walk through what I think is the schedule for the next year or so, just so that folks have an idea of what's coming their way on the council and in the public. So, as I noted, we have 5 books ready right now. There are, 9 total? 9. These are the smaller books, obviously. The bigger books are coming. I'm hoping that we have those ready a couple of weeks before the June meeting. I have to give the council members time to take a look. Obviously, that's where the rubber will meet the road. There's going to be a lot of proposed changes in there, and we definitely want to hear from you folks before we get that out as a notice of rule and development. Notice of rule and development is not a SAPA process. It is our own process that we use to get public comment as soon as we can. We want to get that out sometime in July. We want to leave it out there for the public to comment on the entire package, probably into September, a few weeks before, maybe 3 or 4 weeks before our September meeting. For the September meeting right now, we are trying to get to a point where we have the notice of proposed rulemaking. That is the SAPA process. That's the required by law. That is the actual books that we would be adopting further in the future. Again, we'll have another 60-day comment period, right? Yep. And then we'll have an assessment of those comments. We're going to be communicating back and forth with the members the entire time as we receive comments and as we assess them, so that members can stay ahead of what's happening. I don't think, because the way the timeframes fall right now, September 27th, December 6th, it's only 2.5 months. We're probably not going to be able to adopt in December. I think we're probably going to move up the spring, this meeting next year, up a little bit and try and adopt very early in 25. Obviously, you know, with fire code, building code, energy code as the ones that we're still working on right now, that first step, there's a lot going into that. Staff is really out straight. So it's, you know, it's a process right now. It's iterative, and it's moving quickly. I'm going to say this: we are going to be seeing an electrification proposal in June. That's part of that whole energy code piece. So that is the plan right now. It's well into development. We're looking pretty good. But all of that said, given that schedule, there is a lot of things that are still up in the air, right? We're still waiting for ICC to deliver the IECC. We're still waiting for a few other pieces to fall into place that are behind the scenes. Everything's looking good, but I don't want to guarantee anything. I just want to say we're getting there. We're in a good place. I think next year at this time we're going to be in a real good place. Apparently on Saturday at this time we're not going to be a good place because it just popped up we're getting 8 inches of snow. Okay. Funny thing to jump up in the middle of my speech. All right, that's where we are. Let's move to agenda item. Oh, Kevin, do we have any changes from the agenda? I just noted. Good. Okay. Agenda item 2, draft minutes of December 1st, 2023. You all received this in your package. It's been up on the website since 2 weeks after that meeting. So, can I have a motion to adopt those minutes? Made by Joe Toomey. May I have a second? Made by Robert Hughes. Okay. Is there any discussion? Are there any changes? Anything like that? Okay. Hearing none, then I will put it to a voice vote. All in favor of adopting the minutes of December 1st, 2023, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and those minutes are adopted. Excellent. Okay, John, you're up even faster than you thought this morning, and you're on cruise control. Division update, John Adario from his office upstairs.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Chair, Tebow, co-council members. Can you hear me okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I just have some quick updates. First updates on the NYSERDA proposed life cycle cost methodology rulemaking. The proposed rule was published in the December 27th edition of the New York State Register, which is commenced the 60-day public comment period. The public comment period ended at the end of February, and NYSERDA is currently assessing the public comments. I believe there were about 30 comments total. So once they're done assessing the public comments, the rule will be presented to the NYSERDA board for approval. And then once approved, they'll file a notice of adoption. And then once that becomes effective, we'll update the co-council. So as I've mentioned in previous meetings, staff continues to work with other agencies and work groups on matters that involve potential code-related issues and potential recommendations to the co-council. Currently, there are several different work groups that staff are working on and continue to do so. So one of these items is potential provisions for future climate risks. So executive law was modified in the recent past to include potential standards to be developed in consultation with the Department of Environmental Conservation to address future physical climate risks due to sea level rise, storm surge, and flooding. So the Department of State and DEC have been meeting and working together to examine proposed revisions to address climate risk provisions of the code. There are two main ideas that are being proposed to be incorporated into the code. First, to account for sea level rise, an additional 18 inches projection above freeboard would be applied to tidal coastal areas. This provision is based on the 2050 medium projection for 3 areas of New York's tidal coastlines as determined by New York State Climate Impacts Assessment projections of sea level rise. This is also based on national data. Second, extending the design flood elevation plus freeboard and applicable sea level rise into the 500-year floodplain. The design flood elevation is still based off the 100-year flood elevation. So both of these modifications affect the finished floor elevation. So by raising it an additional 18 inches above the freeboard in certain areas, primarily the Long Island shoreline and the banks of the Hudson River. Also extending the jurisdictional area where the finished floor is required to be elevated into the 500-year flood plain, maintaining the same factors of safety across the floodplains. The next item I'm just going to update you on is the Energy Storage System Work Group. So in February, the Governor's New York State Interagency Energy Storage System Fire Safety Working Group released a draft of their fire code recommendations, and we're looking for public comments, which were received until March 5th. The work group has received approximately 40 comments, and they are being evaluated to determine if further modifications of the recommendations are needed. So before being presented to the Code Council for consideration. So just to highlight some of the 12 more significant recommendations, they include require independent peer review, expand the requirement for explosion control, require fire mitigation personnel to be available, extend safety signage requirements, system monitoring, incorporate requirements for closed circuit television systems, expand the applicability of projects, and then require emergency response plans and regular fire department training. Require monitoring of fire detection systems by a central station. Require fire stops for energy storage system enclosure penetrations. Require periodic special inspections. Include cabinets in all fire code requirements. More of a clarification. Some of the additional items that were discussed by the work group but not being proposed for this update include requirement for root cause analysis after an event, water supply considerations, and clearances from transformers. So many of these recommendations will be addressed in the code update through the adoption of the latest version of NFPA 855. However, some of these do require new provisions and code language to be developed. So, but I just want to thank Kevin, Chad, and Dan Carroll for all their work on these issues. I know it's been a huge help over the past few months, and especially Chad, because he kind of took a lead on some of these items, and I appreciate all his work and expertise on these subjects. So I just wanted to keep you informed on that front. So as the work of the other groups and this group finalizes, I'll keep the co-counsel updated. And just the last item, I've mentioned this before about the ICC hearings. They're being held in April 7th through the 16th. The hearings are for the Group A, which includes part of the IBC, IFC, fuel gas code, mechanical, plumbing, and residential mechanical. So again, these are the changes to the 2024 I codes to create the 2027. DOS does have approximately 15 code change proposals for this code change, and staff will be attending the hearings to present proposals. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Does anyone have any questions for John before we move forward? And obviously, if you don't have them right now, you haven't formulated them yet, you can catch up with John after the fact via email or phone. But does anyone have anything for him right now? Okay. All right, that takes us to you, counsel.
Good morning.
Morning.
So there was a recent update to Executive Law 378 on December 22nd. Chapter 745 of the Laws of 2023 was signed, along with approval memo number 69. And then on February 7th, Chapter 67 of the Laws of 2024 was signed and will take effect on January 1st of 2025. However, effective immediately, the addition, amendment, and/or repeal of any rule or regulation necessary for the implementation of this act on its effective date are authorized to be made and completed on or before such effective date. So as we know, Executive Law 378, if you're not familiar, is the list of all the subjects that the Uniform Code shall address. And what was amended was the addition of a new subdivision 3-A. There was also a modification to subdivision 3, which replaced the phrase the handicapped with the phrase individuals with disabilities. And the new subdivision 3A provides that the Uniform Code shall now address standards for emergency planning and preparedness for high-rise buildings that address the needs of individuals with disabilities, which shall be developed in consultation with organizations that advocate on behalf of individuals with disabilities to be identified by the Department of State in consultation with the Office of the Chief Disability Officer. High-rise building for this purpose means a building with an occupied floor located more than 75 feet above the lowest level of fire department vehicle access. Currently, the Uniform Code defines high-rise building in the same manner. That's in section 202 of the fire code. The standards to be developed shall consider, but not be limited to, procedures for evacuating individuals with disabilities, and if it is necessary, for the fire safety and emergency evacuation plan that the owner or owner's agent shall establish and maintain to include specific features. Currently, the Uniform Code does include provisions within our fire code, specifically sections 403, 404, and 406. For example, approved fire safety evacuation plan shall be prepared and maintained for high-rise buildings. It includes procedures for assisted rescue for persons unable to use the general means of egress unassisted. Procedures for evacuating occupants, including those who need evacuation and assistance, and accessible egress routes, including areas of refuge. There's also provisions for maintenance and updating of the fire safety and evacuation plans, making them available both in the workplace and furnished to the fire code official for review on request. And there's also training provisions with respect to the plans. Accordingly, DOS will consult with the Office of the Chief Disability Officer to identify these organizations that advocate on behalf of individuals with disabilities, review the current Uniform Code requirements, and consider updating such standards for emergency planning and preparedness for high-rise buildings that address the needs of individuals with disabilities in consultation with these organizations. DOS has already reached out to the Office of the Chief Disability Officer, and we have received a list of organizations to start considering to consult with. And we will move forward, as we do with all the other agencies and work groups that we work with, to ensure that this is in our next version of the code.
Okay. Are there any questions on that for Peniota? Okay. All right. Well, gratitude to John and Peniota for their updates. I appreciate you running through those things for us. I guess I would just note that we still obviously have some things we need to get done. Thank you, Peniota. Okay, that moves us to agenda item 4, and yes, we are flying right along, but I believe we're about to hit the skids. Because I'm looking at this.
Right down.
You're slowing me right down. And now I'm turning the meeting over to Kevin. Okay, Kevin, go ahead and walk us through 5 books that you have for us.
All right, so, yep, as Matt noted, we have the 5 books we sent out. Members should have had them in their packets, and they are posted on the meeting notice for this meeting. We had the plumbing, property maintenance, fuel, gas, mechanical, and existing building code. And those versions of the document, they include the integration of the New York State amendments based on statutory requirements, policies, and initiatives of the Code Council and the state that have previously been included in earlier versions of the code, and they've been integrated to blend with versions 1 and 2 from the ICC changes that were already included. We've also started to blend in the additional recommendations and proposals received from, as we talked about, the other state agencies, the public, anything that the co-council has brought up, and we've begun to weave all of those together. They are highlighted in yellow to show the differences between versions 1, 2, and 3. So if you're looking at any particular version, if you're already halfway through 2, you don't have to start over with 3. Everything that's changed is highlighted in yellow, so it'll stand out when you get to version 3. So what I'll do now is I'll go through each of the 5 books and just give what I think are the most notable things that are in those documents. I'm going to change my order a little bit because I'm going to start with the fuel gas code, and I don't want to minimize the amount of work that had to go into making the determination that we made, but as of right now, you'll open that one and there's no highlights. So there's no changes from version 2 to version 3, but staff did go through and look at all the New York State specific items and look at the ICC proposals and the statutes and compare everything, but it turned out in the end, at this moment, we didn't have any recommended changes to that version. Property maintenance code, we removed several ICC proposals and replaced them with New York specific content, and that's more specifically for things like live fire training facilities and swimming pools. We have a little bit different requirements than what ICC base code requires. We adjusted the owner occupied exceptions based on recent technical support and other comments from the public that we've received. Similar to the first thing I said, but we did clarify the swimming pool, spa, and hot tub requirements to include the legislation that was passed recently as far as hot tub covers, the covers that are permitted to be used as enclosures. We also cleaned up the retroactivity barrier and alarm provisions to be a little more clear and concise. We aligned the definition for historic buildings with the new definition that's provided in the energy code. Cleaned up the inoperable motor vehicles language to clarify what it means to be an unlicensed vehicle, which is questions that we've gotten in the past. And it also permits the storage of inoperable motor vehicles in approved structures, which wasn't previously clearly allowed in the code. Then last thing for the property maintenance, we added an exception to the minimum room area requirements for tiny homes. The way the property maintenance code is written right now from ICC, that's not in there, and you would immediately be in conflict with the property maintenance code if you built a tiny home to the residential code. So that's actually was one of the things that's in the NYCR right now, the New York State changes, but instead of putting it in there, we put it directly into the book. Jumping to plumbing code, we added language for the grease interceptors, if everyone remembers fondly the rulemaking from last year that we did. And we integrated the plumbing code provisions into there, so that way it doesn't have to reside in 1228 anymore, or 1229 anymore. We did minor coordination with ICC changes, again, for the historic New York State language, and in this case, it was focusing on gender-neutral facilities, as well as fixture flow rates. There's another area where we diverge a little bit from what ICC's base code is. We modified the roof vent extension provisions to align the residential provisions and the plumbing provisions together. There's a little bit of a discrepancy based on how they're currently written, so we made sure that they aligned. We added new content with reference standards for cured-in-place pipelining. It was brought to our attention that there were some standards that weren't included in the base I-code provisions, and we actually, one of the proposals that John talked about, we're making a proposal to ICC to include those additional reference standards, and basically it expands the capabilities of methods of rehabilitating sewers with cured-in-place pipelining. And then a common theme to some of these, we removed the Board of Appeals appendix that was included in version 1 and 2. It was included in there just because it was an ICC change, but in New York State we have the 1205 variance procedure, so the appendix isn't necessary in New York State. Right. Mechanical code, we removed Appendix D and E for clean air delivery, and then moved Appendix D for MERV 13 ready systems into the main body of the code. Again, removed the Board of Appeals appendix, and adjusted several other sections of the code to align with New York State typical language that we've used in the past. And last one, we've got existing building code. So this time around, ICC moved some various language out of individual compliance paths and into Chapter 3, which is stuff that applies to all the compliance paths. And one of those things was carbon monoxide requirements. but that requires us to make our New York State modifications to the carbon monoxide requirements in Chapter 3. So that was done this time around. We pulled in the definition of reconfigured space from Appendix J in the residential code into the existing building code. It's a question that we get frequently as to what that term means, and we have a defined term, but it's just not in the right code book. Aligned the definition with historic building again with the energy code. Again, remove the Board of Appeals appendix, and other minor tweaks that we did for New York State specific changes that need to be incorporated. I think Matt talked a little bit about this, but additional items remaining to be included in these documents. We have administration and enforcement changes that need to go in, which is basically the Chapter 1s. And then any New York State specific changes based on any recent statutory requirements or amendments, in addition to coordination with the other books. So as we develop the fire code, the residential code, and the building code, if it necessitates a change in these books, we'll have to update these versions accordingly. And then very minor edits such as, editorial things. It might still say International Property Maintenance Code within these documents. Obviously, the intention is we'll pull that out and we'll put in Property Maintenance Code of New York State. Those things haven't fully been addressed yet. And I think the only other thing I have is I think all the members did receive a comment letter from Keith Wen on 320 for our comments to the building code. And we did get a chance to start going through and review that, and I think a majority of those comments will naturally be addressed with the future version of the building code. Some of them are just coordinated things when integrating the 24 and the 21 and then the New York State specific changes and various erratas. I think a lot of those will be, they'll just kind of work themselves out. There were some questions in relation to ESS systems, which depending on the work group recommendations, I think we sort of need to get those recommendations first and then integrate that in and then see how the ESS section looks after that, and then we can talk about these additional comments. And then there was a couple of comments based on the state multiple residence law that we'll definitely look into and see how those blend together to make sure that they coordinate properly. There was a question about Office of Emergency Management needing to look at a particular section. So we have here at Department of State, we have a Department of State Director of Agency Emergency Management. So we'll be working with that individual to also work with OEM to make sure if there's any updates we need to make that are New York State specific. But thank you, Keith, for taking a look and giving us those comments. I think it's going to be very helpful and will help produce a better document in the end.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay, I know that was a lot in actually a very short amount of time. Hold on. I know that the members are seeing this stuff separately, so we don't necessarily have to really dig deep in the meetings unless members want to. So I'm going to open that up now. If members want to make comments now or ask questions of Kevin, let's do that. Anybody? Okay. All right. Okay. I'm going to encourage. Oh, Keith, is that you?
Yeah, there's a lag in the transmission here, but just want to say thank you to Kevin and the code team for looking at the questions already and getting started on findings and answers. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith, for the comments, and I'm going to echo Keith and thank Kevin and his staff. It is, as you can see from what he just described, there's a lot of moving parts still happening. That's why there's still 4 books open, 3 of which are within Kevin's purview and 1 in Emma's. So thank you to the staff. I know this has been a hard run, and it's probably not likely to end for a little while, but heads down, we keep going. Okay, I do want to encourage members to communicate with Kevin and Emma and John through the interim period. We're gonna be shipping you stuff pretty regularly now. I think, well, maybe into May after these guys get back from, and into June after these guys get back from the ICC meetings, where they're already thinking about 2027. I don't know how you keep it all in your head. I'm having trouble keeping it in my head, so good work. But I do want to really encourage that sort of communication back and forth. It's going to make the meetings in June and September, which I expect to be long and sort of involved, it's going to make them just a little bit easier if we know sort of where your thinking is headed before we get into those meetings. Okay. Anything else, Kevin? No. All right. Okay, we're into public comment. So, as Kevin noted earlier, we're gonna keep everyone to 3 minutes, because that's been our standard. What are we up to? 8?
So we still have 8, and I guess we'll start in person in the Albany office. I think we have 1 in person here.
Go ahead, Michael.
Michael, if you could announce yourself, just so the stenographer has your name, spelling of your name, and where you come from.
Michael Hernandez, HERNANDEZ, New York Policy Director for Rewiring America. Thank you, council members, for all the hard work you're doing, and staff, NYSERDA and DOS. We've been eagerly following along, and really appreciate the time and effort that everyone's putting into this process. You know, we're encouraged by the comments that have been made about the changes that are upcoming, and eager to see the Energy Code version 3.0 at the June meeting. We were alarmed this week by the decision of the ICC Board of Directors to strip out the pro-electrification provisions of the IECC model code that serves as the basis of New York's code. And I think from what we've learned so far, it seems as though there will be an option to still utilize those provisions that were stripped out in the appendix. And so we would encourage staff and council to continue to use those provisions as the basis of New York's code, and not follow the lead of the board of directors of the ICC. I think that their decision was, you know, went against what was their own experts and appeals process had decided that they were going to do, or had recommended. And I think also we applaud DOS for, you know, appearing in the appeal hearings, and for opposing those appeals. And so we thank you for that. Lastly, I'll just mention that the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act does have a provision in there that basically requires all state agencies, when doing administrative decisions, to consider what those administrative decisions, the impact of them, will they be consistent with our greenhouse gas reduction goals? And so we would just ask, you know, before you put out your plan to the SAPA process, that there be a consideration of whether that energy code will interfere with our greenhouse gas emissions. I think the law basically provides that if it is going to be inconsistent, that you put out a statement of justification for why. And it would be great if the council and the staff could just let the public know, yeah, we've considered this pursuant to law, and we've decided that we are in alignment or not, and therefore we don't need to do the statement of justification. So thank you for your time again, and good luck on the changes coming up. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Kevin, who's next? And I'm going to just, before Kevin announces who's next, now that you're speaking online, I'm not seeing you directly, can you please state your name, spell your name, and say where you're from, just so that the stenographer can get that information. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, to that point, I don't see anybody in New York City, and I don't see anyone in Buffalo, just so that's clear. So yeah, we'll move on to remote, and I think, Chad, you're gonna handle this muting and unmuting, but I will note that I see at least two people that have signed up to speak that I don't see their names on here. The first one was supposed to be Michael Gary,
I do not see
and I
Michael
don't
Gary.
see them. So if you are in attendance and under a different name, if you could just throw something to me in the chat, but that would move us on to John McBride.
Not
working.
able to
Let me
unmute.
try. All right, John, you should be unmuted. And then your name disappeared.
Anywhere to the top.
Talking
All right,
now,
John,
can
you, yeah.
you
There
copy,
you go.
council?
We hear you now.
Okay, good morning. John McBride, JOHN MCBRIDE, from Half Moon, New York. And I sit on a electrical board that we educate inspectors, electricians on electrical code. And right now, I submitted a letter. I don't know if you had a chance to review it. I submitted a letter yesterday expressing our concerns about moving forward to the most updated electrical code. And presently, New York State is on the 2017. We use the 2017 as a reference guide, the NEC, which is the National Electrical Code. And I understand we're not going to, or we might move to the 2024. And it sounds like in conjunction with the adoption of ICC 2024, that it looks like it's the end of this year into the spring of next year. That's what I've been hearing. I've sent several letters to Kevin and Secretary of State, Mr. Rodriguez, just to keep him in the loop. And recently I figured I'd submit it to the Code Council for your review. So as educators of the electrical code, what we contend with is adopting or educating electricians to the most updated codes, but it's 2017. Well, 2020 and 2023 National Electrical Codes have restrictions in there, and they have items in there that are based on safety of people that use electricity, such as the outside disconnect for firefighters. That's in the 2020 code requirement. So right now it's not required because New York State is recognized in the 2017 National Electrical Code. And what we also contend with is we have electricians and inspectors that work in other states. So what they contend with is they have to have knowledge of the 2017 NEC in New York State. Massachusetts uses the 2023 NEC. Connecticut uses the 2020 NEC. New Jersey uses the 2020 NEC. So they have to be versed in many different types of codes depending on where they go. So that's a little bit of a concern we have. And I also belong to an organization that we have interstate meetings, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Maryland, and we talk about code, obviously. We update our participants in the updated code. Right now, the 2023 is the most updated code. Hudson Valley Community College teaches the most updated code, and that's the 2023. So they're teaching their students, the National Electrical Code 2023, even though the industry is only recognized as 2017 because of the ICC and the little bit of lag. I understand 2021 was not adopted, which would have incorporated the 2020 National Electrical Code. So we're quite behind at times for safety.
Mr. Bride,
And then, go ahead.
I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap up, please.
Okay, I'll wrap up. Governor Hochul, I know, is promoting much electricity and energy and electrical thermal storage and electric vehicles. And we certainly have to keep up with the most updated codes to deal with Governor Hochul's mandates. But it was mentioned early on of something about electrification. What did that refer to? It was the opening statement. I don't know if you recall that.
Sir, you're over time. I have to stop.
Okay, no, not a problem. Thank you. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and you can review the correspondence that I sent. Thank you again.
Will do. And we received the letter yesterday. Kevin, we'll get it out to the members.
Okay, Michael Gary is back on, so I'm going to unmute Michael Gary. Go ahead, you should be unmuted.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, well, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to the New York Code Council, the Building Code Council, on the issue of heat pumps, in particular, the use of propane R290 refrigerant as the refrigerant in a residential heat pump. I'm speaking also in support of comments made by New Yorkers for Cool Refrigerant Management, which outlined a lot of the issues around this topic. They pointed out that R290 propane is while it's a flammable substance, it's can be used safely in what are called monoblock heat pumps for residences, where the propane is located outside in the unit located outside of a building or a house, and heat up a fluid that would be pumped into the residence for heating, and also can be used for air conditioning as well. So this is why this is important is that there's a big movement to install heat pumps for decarbonization of buildings, of heating, replacing fossil fuel boilers and furnaces. It's really a great trend, but the problem is that a lot of these heat pumps tend to use what called fluorinated refrigerants that are being phased out under the U.S. AIM Act. New York State is planning a phase out of these refrigerants, and also a new generation of fluorinated refrigerants known as HFOs are problematic for not for climate reasons, but for the fact that they're linked to PFAS or forever chemicals. Whereas R290 propane is a natural refrigerant, and it's safe for the environment, and it can be used safely in these heat pumps. What's very important to understand is that in Europe, there are many manufacturers of these R290 monoblock heat pumps that are being released and installed throughout Europe. Some of the companies that are using these, that are making these heat pumps available include Trane, Bosch, Lendimplex, LG, Mitsubishi, Panasonic, Samsung, Valent, Eastman, Wolf, Clivet, among others. So it's clearly something that has been
15
adopted
seconds.
and is being adopted. So am I out of time for this? Or?
You got about 10 seconds.
Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to say, that the R290 heat pumps are a viable technology, widely available in Europe and other countries, and I hope that the committee here will consider them and take into account and ASHRAE is also looking into this as well in the U.S. and take into account comments made by the New Yorkers for Cool Refrigerant Management. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next up is Kevin Scott, but I do not see, I'll check again, I don't see Kevin's name in here, let me just refresh. Okay, so we'll skip over Kevin Scott. If you are here, send me a chat. Thomas Deary is next. Tom. You should be unmuted, Tom.
We can hear you.
Great. Well, good morning, members of the council and staff. Thank you for letting me speak today. My name is Thomas, Thomas Deary, Deary. I am the Director of Codes for the Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Institute, or AHRI. AHRI represents more than 330 manufacturers of air conditioning, heating, and refrigeration equipment. It is an internationally recognized advocate for the HVACR industry and certifies the performance of many of the products manufactured by its members. My comments today are on the mechanical code. AHRI supports the added language for HVAC and refrigeration equipment using A2L refrigerants that is present in the most recent modification of the code, which is consistent with the current model codes. Our only requested additional modification is in Chapter 15, Reference Standards. We would like to request that the code updates the reference to ULCSA 6335, that's 60335-2-40 to the 2022 edition, and UL 6335-2-89 to the 2021 edition. We would also like to request that they update the referenced versions of ASHRAE 15 and ASHRAE 34 to the 2022 editions. The HVAC and refrigeration products that use A2L refrigerants will be built to and installed in accordance with these updated standards. The updated standards described here also include all of the most current safety requirements and best practices for these products, which is why we wanted to make sure to get them included here. That concludes my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Next up is Robert Glass. Just find your name. All right, Robert, you should be unmuted.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Good. My name is Robert Glass, RobertGlass. I'm the manager of state regulatory affairs for Daikin Comfort Technologies. I will say ditto to what Mr. Deary just noted concerning the updates needed in Chapter 15 for the A2L refrigerants. I will add some additional information to help support the request that Tom has made. In that particular, the updating of the -2-40 to the 2022 edition is needed because computer room air conditioners using A2L refrigerants are not addressed in any other standard. They are only addressed in the 2022 edition. So failure to do that would not allow computer room air conditioners with A2L refrigerants to be used in the state of New York. And manufacturers, because of the AIM Act, have to go ahead and move away from the existing high GWP refrigerants to these new A2L low GWP refrigerants, effective no later than 1/1/2025. So that's critical there. The other thing, as far as Tom noted, the update of the -2-89 standard to the 2021 edition. Currently, the 2017 edition has been added to the proposal, but the 2017 edition does not include A2L certification requirements for refrigeration equipment. That's only contained in the 2021 edition. All of the standard updates that Tom noted have been approved by ICC and are included in the 2024 IMC, which is where most of the other updates that have been made in chapters 9 and chapter 11 around the A2L refrigerants, that's where all of that information came from. So do encourage the council to go ahead and make those updates that were noted there. In addition, for the next group of standards that will be addressed with the residential, similar updates will need to be made in the Chapter 44 of the residential code to the -2-40 and ASHRAE 34 standards to set things up appropriately for the state of New York in addressing A2L equipment that are probably are already being introduced into the state. So we stand ready to assist in any way necessary. And just thank you for the time to present these critical things to the council this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, we have Seth Wiley is up next. All right, Seth, you should be unmuted.
We can hear you.
Oh,
Yes, we can.
good afternoon, Seth Wiley, SethWiley. I live in Rockland County, New York. I'm a licensed architect. I'm also happen to be a member of the New York State American Institute of Architects Board of Directors. It's Westchester Hudson Valley Chapter Board of Directors. And I'm actually also a member of the ICC's Energy Code Development Committee. This morning's comments are on behalf of myself, though, not those organizations. And thanks to everybody here putting in time and work and listening to public input. It's greatly appreciated. On the commercial energy code, when it's, I guess, officially under consideration by this body, AKA issued by the Energy Code, I'm hoping that New York State looks fairly closely at least on the commercial side, the oil-fired equipment minimum efficiencies in Table C403, and also on the residential side, I'm hoping that this committee looks closely at the U factors and the R values in the 2022 code, and basically for the purposes of passive survivability under indoor temperatures, doesn't decrease any U factors or R values below current codes. Also, I'd hope that this body, the state, would offer actually increased help to municipalities considering any of the residential and commercial tendencies as they have been expanded. And then I hope a couple of last things. I'd hope that the council looks a little bit more closely, considering it actually this applies to the building and fire codes, given that there have been, some of these multi-story high-rise fire propagation incidents, whether the council is going to look more closely at any of the materials systems and compliance, basically related to NFPA 285 and similar protections against vertical fire propagation. And finally, I'd appreciate if the state could consider an alternate energy code compliance path be provided for passive house certification and/or its WUFI energy modeling. That's it. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
All right, Mary Thompson is next. All right, you should be unmuted.
Mary Thompson, MaryThompson. I'm the CEO of the Home Builders and Remodelers of Central New York, a trade association for residential construction in the Syracuse area. There's a lot of very specific people who have spoken today. I have some really practical, kind of on-the-job type of information I'd like to pass on to the staff and the Code Council members as a group of our members, builders, got together to talk about electrification, what they're hearing from the public, what's happening out there. Those folks who want an all-electric home and can afford it are doing it, oftentimes with a combination of geothermal and solar. As you know, it's a lot about the design. And so those that can afford it are definitely doing it. One of our most green builders, who is internationally known, he's very knowledgeable in the field, actually took one of his homes and electrified it and had a really challenging time. He said it was very loud. His electrical bill went up tremendously, and below 15 degrees, it did not work. So the members are really hoping that the Code Council will consider, especially in the colder zones in New York State, a hybrid system, because that's what works practically. Now, Kevin, the green builder who talked about the use in his own house, also did talk about the refrigerant that several of the other people, Michael and I think it was Seth, talked about the refrigerant and how that's not healthy for the environment. And that is just really starting to come to light that these air source heat pumps use. So that really needs to be looked into much more practically. So again, we hope that you'll consider a hybrid system, and we have a lot of examples that the builders are working on and want to continue to work with you on to give advice on how things can work more practically. And just one more quick things to the NYSERDA staff, please let's not forget about existing homes. That's where most of our greenhouse gas emissions are coming from. We have the technology through air sealing homes and through weatherization to really help those older homes who were often built without insulation at all. And so we can't forget about the existing homes in this whole process. So please reach out to the industry. We want to help, and we appreciate all the work that the staff and the council members are doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Bill Nowak. All right, Bill, you should be unmuted.
Your time and thank you for your efforts. My name is Bill Nowak, Billnowak. I'm a board member of the New York Geothermal Energy Organization and also active with the Renewable Heat Now campaign. I basically want to urge you to adopt as strong and robust provisions of the All-Electric Building Act as you're able to. I live in Buffalo. 15 or 16 months ago, we had a bomb cyclone come through this city. 47 people died in that incident. We had our children breathing smoke from Canadian wildfires for much of last summer. The climate emergency is here. We have built a blanket around our earth, and we are adding layers to that blanket every year. It's just going to get worse and worse unless we act, and we act with alacrity. I followed the Climate Action Council's proceedings. The All-Electric Building Act was one small baby step provision that came out of those proceedings. It's an important one, and it's really important that it be adopted fully and really carried through. We have dug ourselves into a deep climate hole, and unless we stop digging, it's just going to get much, much worse. And the All-Electric Building Act is a good first step in stopping digging. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your efforts. Please keep those thoughts in mind as you move forward.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have one last person left to speak, and I'm going to butcher your last name, so I apologize. It's Steve Cavaleris. Let me find your name. All right, Steve, you should be unmuted. Try that again.
Yes, my name is Steve Cavaleris.
Steve, we can hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
We do.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure and honor to be here. I was informed by John McBride, who's a fellow member of the IAEI, about this, and I really consider it to be a privilege. I'll make it short and very quick. I'm just going to let you know a little bit about myself, so at least you know where I'm coming from. I'm an electrical instructor. I'm also an electrical inspector. I also serve as a finance committee member for all of IAEI across the country for all the chapters. And I'm just going to talk about one thing, because I know I only got about 3 hours to talk here, or 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. So I'm just going to talk about something that's going to save firefighters' lives. And that's going to be the emergency service disconnect under the National Electrical Code, which is section 230.85. And under the 17 code, we don't have to have that emergency disconnect outside of a 1 or 2 family dwelling. But in the 2020 and the 2023 code, it's required. And I just did a quick update on how many firefighters died in the last 10 years. And it's about, from 2010 to 2019, 63 firefighters died from electrocution. And by having this emergency service disconnect, it allows the firefighters to turn off the power before they go into the building to fight the fires. And that's why I think that's one of the many reasons that the new National Electrical Code should be adopted as soon as possible. That's the end of my comment for this meeting.
Thank you so much.
All right, we did just get one more person right in, Ann Erling.
Thank you.
And you should be on mute.
Hi, thank you. I'm Ann Erling, ANNEERLING, a volunteer with New Yorkers for Cool Refrigerant Management. And I provided public comment at your December meeting and followed up with supplementary material, which hopefully you were able to see, related to allowing the use of R290 and A3 refrigerant in monoblock residential heat pumps. It doesn't seem that the draft provisions for the mechanical code yet allow for this. The international code that has been allowing A3 refrigerants up to a charge size of 10.9 pounds since May of 2022, that is IEC 60335-2-40, uses a calculation of releasable charge and airflow to determine the safety of this charge size for A3 refrigerants. For monoblock heat pumps, which are factory sealed and sit outside homes with no refrigerant circulating inside homes, the outside airflow surrounding these devices ensures safety inside homes. Safety issues from these heat pumps should be comparable to those caused by outdoor grills or cars parked in driveways, things New Yorkers already have at their homes. We ask that you use a similar release charge and airflow calculation to approve the use of A3 R290 and monoblock heat pumps. Why address this now in this current New York Code update cycle? Because we're in a climate crisis that I recognize you're taking into account from comments at the start of this meeting. The climate crisis makes it problematic to wait on this issue. New Yorkers are in the process of installing mini split heat pumps that will leak refrigerants with 20-year GWPs of over 4,700 for years to come. Elsewhere in the world, people are installing factory-sealed monoblock heat pumps that pose much less danger of leaking and are filled with R290 that has a 20-year GWP of 0.07. So a GWP of over 4,000 here in New York to less than 1 elsewhere. Elsewhere in the world, homeowners are getting the opportunity to install climate-friendly heat pumps. We ask that New York homeowners get access to the same opportunity to make a similar climate-friendly choice. The United States was a party to the International Code update that was approved in May of 2022, allowing these charge sizes for A3 refrigerants. But our U.S. approval system traditionally requires several other steps for us to access these standards in the United States. That process has begun. ASHRAE's SSPC 15 committee has published an advisory public review draft in support of this update, but the full review won't be completed before New York completes this current code update. Given the climate crisis, we ask that you enable us to access this climate-friendly heat pump option already in this code update cycle and directly amend the mechanical code to harmonize with the charge size requirements in the IEC standard that was published in 2022. Thank you very much for all your work and for the opportunity to provide these comments.
Thank you so much.
Very good. I don't see anyone else chiming in.
Okay, last call for public comment. Kevin sees no more. Okay, with that, I will close public comment for the March meeting and direct folks to the June meeting. Okay, that moves us into agenda item 6, which is future meetings. Right now, they are scheduled for June 28th, September 27th, and December 6th. Hopefully, we do not have to move those because, as I'm finding out, moving meetings can be very, very difficult with everyone's schedule so tight. With that, we move into other business, which is agenda item 7. I believe, Kevin, you wanted to say something before I move further?
Yes, just I guess based on the public comment that we're hearing, I wanted to clarify that the documents that we post does not include a list of any updated standards based on the 24 codes. So for example, some of the standards that were brought up, all of the standards that are brought up, which were the NFPA the two UL listings, ASHRAE 15 and 34, and the various additions that were requested, those are all included in the 24 update already. So naturally by us moving to that base code, all of those standards will be the standards that the public commenters did request.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, before I move the motion to get us into executive session, I'm just going to do this. One more chair's privilege. I know I've been effusive with my praise for staff today, and I'm glad to hear that people are recognizing how hard they're working. I also now need to be effusive with my praise to the members. You are seen once every 3 months. What I think maybe people are starting to get is that you are reviewing the stuff in between. There's a lot of work. It is not just 1, 2, 3, 4 hours. And I'm not highlighting what I think June might look like. Maybe. But there's a lot of work that goes into it. I know that I spend some weekends reading what these guys send me. So I know what it's like for you guys too, and I appreciate it. It really means a lot to me how involved you are and how much you pay attention to what's happening in real time. So thank you. Okay, I'm going to make a motion to move us into executive session. So I move to enter into executive session to discuss our litigation strategy in the case of Mulhern Gas Company, Inc. et al. Versus Robert J. Rodriguez et al. May I have a second for that motion? Joe Toomey. Thank you, Joe. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed? All right, hearing none, we'll move into executive session. We'll ask those in the room to exit. We will shut down the WebEx. Everyone moves to the alternate.
So
WebEx.
anyone in the public who wishes to remain in the existing WebEx, I'm going to stop the recording and we're going to move to a separate WebEx.
Okay, we'll come back and adjourn when we're done. All right, thank you, everyone. We are. What? I didn't hear it.
It already had started.
Okay, great. Okay, we are back from executive session where we discussed litigation strategy in the case of Mulhern, I've done that twice, Mulhern Gas Company, Inc. et al. Versus Robert J. Rodriguez et al. No votes were taken. And we are now back in regular session for the purposes of adjourning. So, unless anybody has any more issues to discuss today, I will make a motion to adjourn until June 28th or at the call of the chair if we need to come back sooner. May I have a second for that motion? Ben does. All in favor? Aye. I heard enough. That's good. We are adjourned until June 28th, 2024 or at the call of the chair. Thank you all. I appreciate all your hard work.